Swift and Tips podcast. I would like to go back to one thing you mentioned. You had the chance to participate in Swiftlets uh,
hmm
last year or a couple of years ago. I mean, I would like to know how was your experience, but also, I I have a question. Maybe again, it's my perception, but I feel that Europe has a great community of iOS developers, and I don't think the same in US. The only
hmm
big event I think, maybe we have Deep Dish in Chicago, but other than that, I think the biggest event is TopTC or a few events
Yeah.
outside of TopTC. But from what I know, I mean, in Europe you have, and it's Spain, you have uh, many events in UK and or France, etc. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think is that? So why there's a strong community there?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, perfect person to ask there would probably be an organizer of such an event. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been to Swift Leads as a speaker
Hmm.
once, and also just as an attendee the following year. And this year, unfortunately, I missed it because I did hand in two talk proposals, but unfortunately, both of them
Hmm.
got declined.
Okay.
So I didn't go there this year. Um, but these are my only conference experiences, and other than that, all I see is on Twitter. And
Okay.
so thinking about it, I would assume that the US, of course, has all of these very big tech giants. They have all of these super large companies like Meta, like Apple, like Google, these huge companies that have very big iOS departments. And
Hmm.
this is just one explanation that I would have in my head. So these huge companies don't really exist in the same manner in Europe. So of course, they have their own branches in Europe, and of course, there's Apple in London, and there's Google in London, and there's also other facilities throughout Europe. And of
Hmm.
course, there was the Vision Pro Lab in Munich as well, and in
Mm.
London, and so on. Um, but I think that in Europe, there's mostly iOS developers from very small companies, from companies where the iOS department is just one, two, or three people. And I
Okay.
think that might be part of the reason why there's more conferences here, because there's more room to exchange because everyone has a totally different experience of iOS development, because everyone's in a
Okay.
totally different field, working with a very small team, and could be a reason. Now, I've never organized a conference, and I don't think I will in the
Mhm.
foreseeable future. So I'm not sure about it, but could be a reason. I mean, what do you think? What would
that,
be?
that's a valid point actually, because I mean, maybe you want to expand uh, your knowledge. I mean, if you're just working with two guys, maybe it
Yeah,
is not enough
exactly.
to share. I mean, with strong engineers out there. So yeah, and because I don't know, but I feel, Europe, maybe in the picture, in a map, it is looks large, but I mean, you can connect across many countries really easy.
Yeah.
So that is something. I mean, I don't want to. I will give a little spoiler about a plan I have in future, but I would like to visit Europe later, and I don't know, because I'm deciding. I mean, if I want to stay here for a long time in US, or moving
hmm
to Europe. So I would like just to visit more places, but stay longer. Well,
hmm
if I'm there in Europe, I will let you know. So,
Yeah, hit me up for
but
sure.
yeah, but the thing is that I'm also that there are a lot of indie community that we will talk about indie stuff
Yeah.
in just a moment. So which is great. I think that's what you said is accurate, because in US you have a lot of companies, and most people are just working for those companies. But instead of
Yeah.
in and also in Europe, I don't know. I think the mm, I, I'm not saying that the compensation is not high, but maybe not as high as US.
Yeah.
So probably people are exploring, other ways for earning more money. So maybe
Yeah,
indie
and I think
going
it's
in
also
is
just
well.
about the learning opportunities. I mean, if you work at Meta, for example, I would assume that they have hundreds of iOS developers throughout their
Mhm.
different projects, and probably not all of
Yeah,
them do Swift, and some do Objective C, some might do some
yeah.
React stuff or whatever. I mean, there's different projects, but if
Mhm.
you have a question about iOS development, you go to one of your 500 coworkers. But if you're in a very small company, then you only have two
Yeah.
coworkers that work in the same code base as you, meaning that they have the exact same experience as you. How would they answer your question? So I think that asks for a conference. I think that could be part of the reason, because you don't have access to the people throughout your company, or throughout, like, if you live in the valley,
Mhm.
there's a billion iOS developers there. I mean, it's super easy to get connected with anyone. Whereas if you live in Hamburg or Berlin or Paris or whatever, it's much harder to get connected. And I think that's why there are so many conferences in all of these bigger European cities.
and and I will tell you something. Maybe it's, again, it's just my way of thinking, but I think in Europe there's a better collaborative way to work. And
Yeah, could be.
unless in my
Yeah.
experience, at Meta, I mean, yeah, you have thousands of developers, iOS developers, but to be honest, not most of them are focused on their work, and it's a
hmm
really aggressive and competitive way to do things. So
Yeah.
it is rare that, hey, let's jump together to learn something. So most people are really busy just doing their stuff. So, and then don't look around. So
Yeah.
that's maybe another
Yeah.
reason.
And I mean, I'm not an iOS developer per se myself, right? I'm not a software engineer. I'm doing my PhD, so I don't have those company insights. But I know a lot of people throughout Europe, from Netherlands and from Germany and from other countries in Europe, where the companies actually, like, they help you start your side project. They help you work on your own app in your free time. They actually support that. So I've heard from people where they have their entire Friday off from work to work on their own stuff. And of course,
Yeah,
that gives you the opportunity to visit conferences. That gives you the opportunity to prepare for conferences. I think that's also a big difference.
that's gold. I want that in my life.
Yeah,
Having
yeah,
all the pride. I mean, working just 4 days in a week, that will be awesome.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I will
if that means
do it.
that it's less work, right? If that means that
Yeah,
it's
of
the
course, of
same
course.
work but
Yeah,
squashed
yeah,
into 4 days, that would be
yeah. No,
that wouldn't be too good.
yeah, no, yeah. I don't mean working 4 days, but just 12 hours away. No, 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 no.
Yeah,
That's another point.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's probably many different reasons for that as well, and perhaps that's just because of the flow of things. If there's one very successful conference, and of course in the US you have DubDub, and that is
Mhm.
not a regular iOS conference. That is not
Yeah,
comparable to SwiftLeads. That's not
yeah. Exactly.
comparable to FrenchKit, or I think they changed
Mhm.
their name. I'm not sure, but that's on a totally different level. And
Mhm.
you don't have WWDC in Europe, so you have to have, or people want their own experience similar to DubDub. And I think
Yeah.
that might also be an incentive of why there are more conferences here, because it is quite expensive to go to DubDub from Europe. I mean, the flight alone is super expensive. The hotel's gonna be booked. Every single hotel is gonna be booked. Every single Airbnb in the area is gonna be booked. So going there is super expensive. Whereas going to a neighboring country within the EU, you can do that by train. I mean, that's usually like a 5, 6, 7 hour train ride,
Mhm.
super cheap, and that might also be part of the reason, because we just don't have access to the best conference out there.